another experience that took me outside of this construct that we currently believe that we live in, which is not just Earth, but all the other different levels within this construct. And it took me outside of that to where we are created from. And I participated in that, and I felt it, and it is so real. And in the reality of having experienced it, no one can ever take it away from me. And then what happened is in the next OBE is I was taken back to the source of all creation and reabsorbed back into source. My name is David Ebel, and I'm so grateful for all of my life and all of my experiences. And last year, I never thought that I would see this year. My heart was in heart failure. I had been life flighted twice from the place that I live in to the major hospital about 3 hours away with heart failure. And really did not believe that I was going to continue to live, and so was preparing for death. And now what has happened is that my heart has been healed. Not only healed, but I'm back playing tennis and mountain biking and involved with my children in activities that I have not been able to do for over 25 years. And I really am just so grateful to be here and to share my story. My story begins almost 67 years ago. It'll be 67 in November. And 67 years ago, I was born to a middle-class family and in the United States, and a father that was in the military. Had been brought up by a very violent father, and that's all that he knew. And so that's the way he was with both my mother and I. And then, so I grew up in that violence with all the support that it had with my dad being in the military. What happened for me in growing up in that environment is it really helped me to become very hypersensitive to the world, and at a very young age. My grandmother on my mother's side was, or my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother on my mother's side was very psychic, but my grandmother was very psychotic. And my mother somehow survived all of that and did the very best that she could to bring me up in a loving and Christian home. I grew up going to all sorts of different Christian churches in the military, because we would go from base to base about every 6 months. And so I was brought up in many different churches with many different understandings of Scripture. And that was really a basis for my growing up. When I was 4, my mother told me, my mother told me several years ago, and she said, when you were 4 years old, you said that when you grew up, you were going to be just like Christ. And of course, I don't remember that. But also my great grandmother had said something along the same lines, is that there was something that I was going to be doing in the world that was important. And of course, whatever that means, I don't know. Um, as I grew up in, normally in high school and did well and was really drawn to the healing arts and eventually in college was in pre-med and was studying to be a physician. And about 3 years into it, I worked for the physician's answering service and talked to a bunch of physicians and said, they told me they'd never do it again because their family lives were really challenged by the requirements of their position. And so I got very depressed and almost suicidal and then took a battery of interest tests and scored really high in physical therapy and became a physical therapist after a few years of study. And then was able to bring who I am into that world. And about a year after graduating from physical therapy school, I really felt a calling to go into the ministry. And so then I went to seminary and became an ordained minister for in a non-denominational tradition. And then started doing substituting pastoring to different communities. And during the seminary that I went to, the requirement for the seminary and why I chose it is that they required us to study all 6 of the major religions that humanity is aware of at this point in time. And so during the 4 years, that was my requirement, is to gain an understanding from everything from fundamentalism to mysticism, and then bring that information together. So I was studying all the different sacred texts from these 6 different traditions. And what I began to understand from that is how they all have the same basis. They have almost all the same 10 Commandments. They almost have the same morals and ethics to guide us by. And so that really, brought into question my Christian's beliefs and realizing that that the Christ is a consciousness, that the Christ is something that is there for all of us in all of these different beliefs. So what happened for me in my life is that I had studied all of these religions, and then through meeting with groups of pastors and priests that would gather together to study scripture together and debate scripture together, I got to the point where I was in these discussions and we were having these great debates, and all of a sudden there was something that came into me. There was a voice that came into me that said, "This is not it. Is debating scripture and debating knowledge of God is not it." And so I just stopped in the middle of the debate and I said, and I'll just be blunt, is exactly what I said. I said, this is bullshit. And I said, I want what's real. And this is what I said to this group of pastors and priests. And I said, could you please all pray over me that I experience God, not just know God? And they prayed over me, and I said I'm not coming back here. I am now going to be experiencing God. That was my commitment, was to have the full experience of God. And because I knew God from all my studies, I knew about God. I knew about the stories that were written about Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and the other teachers, but I had never really experienced it. My health challenges started in 2001, in December of 2001. My heart went into atrial fibrillation, and they couldn't get me out of it. The events of 2001, when the towers fell, absolutely broke my heart, because what I saw, it opened my eyes, because what it revealed to me is what I was being shown in the media was not true. And that broke my heart because I could no longer have faith in my government. I didn't have faith in people. I lost my faith in people. And that's truly, it broke my heart because I lost faith in humanity. And it did. And and luckily I had a friend of mine that's a pastor, and he came into my space because I lost the use of my left arm as well. I couldn't, and I, as a physical therapist, I could only use my right arm. So my heart went into arrhythmia. I lost the use of my left arm, and after about 6 weeks or so, the pastor came into my life, and he's also non-denominational, and he said, David, and I told him that I had lost faith in humanity, and my heart was broken. My heart was shattered because of losing faith. And he said, David, that's well and good, but who and what are you supposed to have faith in? And that's when I shifted and I said, that's it, is that my faith resides in whatever God is. And I have a sense that it is that the God that I've understood all my life is much bigger than what I've understood. And then and then there was a miraculous restoration of my right arm um, soon thereafter. My heart and how the heart health has affected me over these last 25 years or 24 years has really significantly been a part of my growth process. It has significantly impacted and impaired my ability to be active in the world, and it's really forced me to be introspective and also really focus on my own healing, and then through my own healing being able to be present for the healing of those that I come in contact with. In 2001, when the towers fell, I began having the atrial fibrillation, and then they were working with medications. I was going in for cardioversions to try to keep my heart under control so I could be active. And this is when I've got 5 small boys. Raising 5 boys, and then my wife, bless her heart, who didn't know what was going to happen with me, and I was the main breadwinner for the family. And so then it progressed to 2006 when I had my first ablation, and my ablation worked temporarily, but they kept me on medication. 2012 I had my second ablation for the same thing, atrial fibrillation. In 2019 I had my third ablation. And then what was happening is that with my third ablation, unfortunately, the surgeon, um, when I came out of the surgery, I did have an out of body experience, experiencing my heart going into arrest, but just out of body enough to see my body down below and everything that they were doing to it. But I came out with then having junctional rhythm, which is another arrhythmia, and then also the atrial arrhythmia. And so I went in for my fourth ablation about 3 months later um, to try to correct that, and that corrected for about 10 months. And then after that, I went in for my fifth ablation. And after my fifth ablation, the electrophysiologist said that they needed to do a modified open heart surgery to correct that. So a few months later, I had 3 arrhythmias: atrial fibrillation, junctional rhythm, and atrial flutter, as well as sleep apnea, as well as having gained a significant amount of weight, which compromised my breathing even further. And so then I went in for the open heart surgery, the modified open heart surgery. And during that time, this is in 2022, during that time, they went in to do the maze procedure through the modified open heart, and they mistakenly injured my phrenic nerve, which collapsed my left diaphragm, which caused my left lung to atrophy, and then my entire intestine moved up into my thoracic cavity, putting pressure on my heart. Following that, I had frequent pericarditis, which is more painful than the kidney stones that I had had earlier in my life, and hospitalized me several times with the pericarditis, and that and then that led to last year in 2024 when I went into heart failure, had pericarditis, had atrial fib, had atrial flutter, had um, junctional rhythm, and they couldn't control all of this. And so at that point in time, I really did not think that I was going to make it through last year. In 2023, I came in contact with Darius J. Wright's work, and started to really study his work and put it into practice. And his work is working on having controlled out-of-body experiences through sleep paralysis. And in patiently and diligently working with his instruction, what happened after about 4 months, it's about 3 or 4 months, is that I had my first OBE. And during this time, I was in precarious health. And I really wanted to know I wanted to know, and what Darius had said and what I could tell he had experienced was that he knew. And so I wanted to know for myself. I appreciated his experience, but I needed to know for me. And so I followed his instruction. And what that led to, after about 3 or 4 months of working with the material on a consistent basis, with a BiPAP and with an arrhythmias and with heart issues that were significant, and breathing issues, eventually that became significant. But what happened is I had my first OBE, and in that OBE, in that out-of-body experience, is each time that I've had an out-of-body experience in doing his work, I have always asked to be taken to the place that is the highest good for my experience. And the first place that I was taken was into the sixth realm of this construct, into the heavenly realms. And in that place, and in the OBE, I experienced myself as unconditional love. And I have experienced that before in prayer, in meditation, for short periods of time. But in that OBE, it became so real because my physical, or my soul, my experience of my soul was so physical that and hypersensitive, more so than my own physical body that I reside in. And when I was having my soul experience and experiencing everything that I went through in being in unconditional love, I came back feeling unconditional love for, it had to be at least 2 or 3 weeks. And then it dissipated. And then what happened is then I had another experience of an OBE that took me outside of this construct that we currently believe that we live in, which is not just Earth, but all the other different levels within this construct. And it took me outside of that to where we are created from. And I participated in that. And I felt it, and it is so real. And in the reality of having experienced it, no one can ever take it away from me. And then what happened is in the next OBE is I was taken back to the source of all creation and reabsorbed back into source. So in experiencing being reabsorbed by source and going into complete self-forgetfulness in that reabsorption, and yet not giving up any individuality of my soul in that reabsorption, I was then shown how it is that we are brought into light, into frequency, and into soul form. And in seeing that, it has changed everything. And I believe fully, and the unconditional love that I came back from that has been what I live in. And what happened in March of 2024, when I was life-flighted to Boise, Idaho, to the hospital there, is that I died. And in that death, what I experienced is I experienced the death process. And because I had experienced the OBE, it was exactly the same, except for there wasn't as much of a pull to my physical form, to my physical body. I felt free of my physical body. And that's the one thing that I would say is the difference of what I experienced between an NDE and an OBE. In the OBE, I always felt the pull back to my physical body that I had to overcome. In the NDE, what happened is I was set free. And when I was set free, I went into this incredible white room. And in this white space, for me, because of my belief systems and understandings, is I came into contact with the energy of the Christ. And in that is that I had a conversation with him. And in that conversation, he said, David, let me show you your life. And I went through a life review. And in that life review, I saw all my choices. And a majority of my choices were love. And some of those choices, I withheld love. And when I was shown these choices, I experienced what it is to truly withhold love. And it is so painful in that unconditional love to withhold love. It taught me to never do that again. And the other thing that it taught me is when I came through it, and he said, David, you have lived a good life, but you still misunderstand love. And this presence said to me, he said, You believe that love is about giving, and you've done a very good job of giving. And you believe that love is about receiving, and you have done a very poor job of receiving. But what I am here to tell you and to witness to you is love is about being. That love is about being love. In everything that you think, say, and do, no matter where you are, what realm you exist in, it is about being love. When this was told to me, I resonated to the core of my being this love. And then the next thing I knew, because I thought, this is it, I'm done. You know, what's the next step? And the next step was to come back to my physical body. And I don't know what the timing was. It was a few seconds or whatever. It seemed like, I mean, there was no time in this experience. When I came back, ever since that, this is all I felt, is this unconditional love. And all of my interactions are in this unconditional love. With everyone that I come in contact with, hopefully every word that I say is in this unconditional love. And since then, my life has changed. Since March of 2024, my life has never returned to what it was prior to that. And what has happened for me, and again, last year, through the end of the year, there were still challenges and opportunities to really put my understanding, my new understanding of love to the test, including another near-death experience that was just, again, to reinforce the love. And truly, through last year and into this year, is I have had one miraculous healing after another, to the point where I was barely able to walk a block around my home. And even though I continued to work to be able to support my family, that's all I could do. I'd come home and I would have to go to bed. That's all I could tolerate. To, through last year, beginning to be able to hike for short distances, being able to return to activities like skiing, snow skiing in the winter. And then also what's happened is that the age that I showed myself to be in my physical body was old. And what's happening now, and what has been happening particularly over this last year, since last September of 2024, is that my body is getting younger. Is that I'm now hiking very difficult trails for 10 to 12 miles. I'm mountain biking on single track, even after having a stroke last March, which was another piece of the puzzle. Last March, and a head injury as well from snowboarding in 2012. I mean, there's so many medical things that were wrong, and my balance was way off, but I'm mountain biking single track for 10 to 12 miles now. My weight has come off. My need for food has substantially decreased, where really I don't even know if I need to eat, except for it's social. You know, I don't sleep. And I should say, yes, I do sleep and I do rest. But what's happened? It's turned into, in when I measure this with my Apple Watch, is at night is I get about 25 to 45 minutes of REM. And then what happens is I wake up and I'm fully alert. And then I go into meditation, and then I meditate for an hour, and I go into a state of deep rest in that meditation, but it's not sleep, it's not REM. And then I'm fully alert again for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I go into meditation again because I'm continuing to work. I work 9 to 10 hour days being a physical therapist. And and that and so sleep is not really occurring. I'm meditating instead. And food, I'm finding that my diet has changed where I'm not really eating a lot of anything else except for meat products and fat. That even vegetables are really hard for me to digest, and it's really more that, and then also craving salt water. And that's what I drink during the day is ocean salts added into the water that I drink. And my appearance, people are commenting on how my appearance is getting younger, and my vitality. I'm able to play tennis 2.5 hours last Saturday with my son. I played tennis in college competitively and had not been able to play tennis for over 20 years. And now I'm not only playing tennis, but I'm playing it competitively after not playing it for that long. And the skill has come back, which is remarkable. So in looking back retrospectively, what I really have grown to understand is that my OBE, the instruction through Darius Wright, instruction on obtaining the out-of-body experience of the soul separating from the physical body and the physical body consciousness, in having those experiences, in going to heaven within this construct and experiencing the unconditional love, and particularly going outside the construct and being reabsorbed into source, is that I have no fear anymore. And a big piece of that was the 4 months that it took me to be absolved of that fear, of just really coming to the point of being comfortable with my own death, which I believe is really necessary to be able to have the potential of what I've experienced in an OBE, of actually going outside of the construct of Earth and the different levels within Earth. And so when I had the NDE experience in March of 2024, is that I was completely free. I had no fear whatsoever of dying. And in that freedom, it allowed me to fully experience everything that I experienced in the near-death experience, and to fully receive the instruction that I received in that incredibly held white room or white light that I was held in, to be able to receive my life review that showed me the importance and the necessity, or even what it is that we're here to experience in being love. Because we live in a construct that is the opposite. We live in a construct that gives us the opportunity of experiencing not love in the full capacity that we're able to and wanting to experience it, and in that self-forgetfulness of experiencing not love. I truly believe that it's our mission to come through this and be love. And that potentially is the goal, or the gift of what this experience is of this construct. In speaking with Darius and in working with what he's instructed me with, the first and most important thing is the integrity in which he speaks and interacts with us. And that when he speaks, I know what he's speaking is what he's experienced. And I didn't know if it were true or not, but I knew that he had actually experienced it. And that's what drew me to him, is that integrity. Because I wanted to have that same knowingness within myself, yet what I have learned through all my life experience is not to rely on the knowledge of others and to truly seek the experience for myself. And that is one of the major things that Darius also speaks, is that he doesn't want to tell us what he's experienced. He wants us to experience it for ourselves. And so it was that motivation that he really gave me to continue to do the work diligently as long as it took to be able to have this out-of-body experience. Is this what it's all about? Is when we be love, do we really need to experience anything else? Because this is truly all there is. And all there is, because this love that I am now is the same love that I experienced when I was reabsorbed into Source. It's the same love that was spoken out in the tone and the frequency that I am, that became the light. And that light is that same light that we all are in all of creation. And even though I am just one extension of that light, it's what we all are. No matter what we've done in our lives or what we've experienced, I've experienced what it is that we are all together as one in that light of creation. And then how that spreads out into all the constructs that we have created to experience all the experiences that we've experienced as souls. It's that same love that exists outside of being in this physical body and just having an OBE and going into an out-of-body experience and experiencing this unconditional love. It's all the same. In the work that Darius has brought forth to humanity, it is called the Great Work. And Darius states, if you listen to when he speaks, is that that's what he was told that this work is the great work. And the out-of-body experience is a method to be able to experience the great work. Because the great work is this realization of living unconditional love in this world. And I do believe that this is the great work. That in living unconditional love in this world is everything changes. I feel for myself in this last year in particular, in the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025, that I am being resurrected. I feel that I would have died last year had I not had the understanding and been given the gifts of the experiences, the real experiences that I have had in the OBEs, the NDEs, is that I have gone from a state of physical death to a state of physical rebirth. My body's getting younger. My interactions, my relationships, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids has significantly shifted because I am love. And in being love, I am acting completely differently than I have ever participated in this life before. I mean, I've always done my best to love and to be non-judgmental, but I have to admit, looking back at it, is that, I think I was farting unicorns and painting rainbows over everything. And now what's happening is I'm actually When I'm angry, I get angry. And when I'm sad, I'm sad. And when I'm happy, I'm happy. And I'm not having to paint a rosy picture wherever I go. Is that I am experiencing all of me fully. Whereas before, I could not. I mean, this has been my personality all my life as a people pleaser and just agreeing with people and not taking a stand. And now I'm taking stands. You know, when I'm talking with people and they're saying things that are not true, I'm saying, you know, to me, that's just not true. Um, and I'm finding that this unconditional love, because initially I thought that the unconditional love was it. You know, once you reach a state of unconditional love, that's all there is. But what I've learned in this last year is that it's actually living the unconditional love in everything that I think, say, and do. And what happens in living that unconditional love in everything I think, say, and do is authenticity. I am authentically David. For a majority of my life, I wanted to be just like Jesus Christ. And now all I want to be is authentically me. And that's huge. That's a huge change. And through my authenticity, my relationships are now authentic. And I'm holding people accountable in a loving way. You know, I don't have to be mean or cruel, but sometimes I do have to be firm. And I am being firm in all my relationships. And because of that, I see how people are respecting me more. I see how I touch people in the clinic that I work in or through the long distance work that I do, how their lives are changed because I'm authentically walking side beside them or side by side with them. And I'm no longer projecting myself into them, but I just recognize the truth of who they are and what their experience is, and then support that. And it shifted all my relationships because of the authenticity. And I've come to realize that, you know, I would put it this way, is we to know God and Source in the way that I've expressed it, it requires us to be love. In being love, we experience God. And in experiencing God, we are that experience. We are that source. And you know what's fascinating about that is that intellectually, logically, empirically, I knew this. And so I'd been pretending to be authentic all my life, pretending, you know. But it is, as I said before, is to actually reach that step of being the truth of what I am, which is one, is reaching that step of unconditional love within this realm that allows us to experience not love. And all the different experiences and all the different pieces that have been a part of the culmination of what I am now. You know, I just, you know, looking back, I hated every single step of the way, kind of. But but to have this outcome of being love in a place, in a construct that is anti-love or not love, I'm grateful for every single experience that I've had. In being love, I have truly been resurrected in this physical body, and this physical body has healed miraculously, even to the point of this very day before the production of what we're doing right now is I saw my pulmonologist. And in 2022, when I had my open heart surgery, they inadvertently injured my nerve that is connected to my diaphragm, and so my lung completely atrophied. My diaphragm moved up into my heart cavity and compressed my heart, causing heart failure. And I saw the pulmonologist today, and because I had just recently had a lung capacity evaluation, and he called me in, and well, I was in the room, and he came into the room, and he said, David, I cannot explain this. He said, in my career of over 30 years, is I have never seen a phrenic nerve, or the nerve that was damaged, restored. I have never seen an atrophied lung restored. Not only is it restored, but it's symmetrical. He said, I've seen damage before, but within a year, you have a year for some to come back, but it's always asymmetrical. And he said, not only have you been restored, but you've been restored back to full health. And and my heart is now consistently reacting to all the different stresses that are being put on it with the activities. Whereas before my heart rate was 32 to 45, except for when I'd go into my arrhythmias, and then it'd go anywhere between 120 to 360 beats per minute, as well as having several different arrhythmias. And now my heart, and some of this is definitely due to the medical care that I've had, and all of this is to do with love and being loved, because all of these changes, I had a stroke in March of 2024. I was walking with a cane. I had very poor balance, and now I'm riding a mountain bike on single track without falling off a cliff. And I'm going over some pretty uh, challenging terrain, and with my sons, and just loving it. My balance is restored. My heart's restored. My lungs restored. I am doing activities that I haven't been able to do for 20 years. I am playing tennis competitively again. And tennis has always been one of my greatest loves in this world, in the way to express myself physically. I'm able to dance again. I'm able to hike again. I'm able to participate with my kids without being exhausted. I'm able to come home and actually work in the yard instead of having to go directly to bed. My wife is overjoyed because I can actually participate in our relationship now. And she, for many years, thought, is he going to wake up in the morning? And now not only do I wake up in the morning, but I don't even go to sleep. So, and just the idea of being able to have full capacity with the very little sleep that I get, and to have full energy with not really eating as much as I've thought that I had to eat. Um, it's remarkable. The restoration that has occurred since March of 2024, and realizing that I am love and living that love in the world. My whole body is healed, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful because this is what I've hoped for my entire life. It's what I have asked for, is that in everything that I think, say, and do, that I be love. So what's happened for me in being reabsorbed in Source and having that experience of unconditional love in Source is that I reside in Source all the time. I reside in the light of creation all the time. I reside in my soul's presence all the time. I reside within my physical body that everyone knows me as David all the time. And I reside in all of it all the time. And so the different plays that are being played out in this construct no longer affect me because I see it all playing out within this construct, but it doesn't dictate to me reality. My reality resides in source. My reality and my consciousness reside in source. You know, in the way that I used to say source, my reality is in God. My consciousness is dictated by God. But now I recognize with all the different misunderstandings that have been created around the word God, that source is truly a more accurate description because that source is my source, and it is from that that my consciousness creates in this world. Bringing this to conclusion, what I really would like to share is that the great work is for each of us and all of humanity as we are focused in this is being love. And being the presence of love is what we are all being guided toward. And we are all having the circumstances and experiences and relationships that challenge us to be that love. In the great work that Darius has been bringing forth is the opportunity through OBEs to experience for ourselves being love. Because outside of this construct, when you have an OBE, is you go directly into that state of love and you experience it. And also being in prayer and being in meditation and being with family and being with friends gives us the opportunity to be that love in the world. In all of this and bringing it all together, I truly believe this is the next step for humanity. And you don't have to be a saint, and you don't have to live in a convent or a monastery or in a cave. You can participate in everyday life and have the strains and stresses and heck, the medical complications and still be this love. I mean, I'm not special. I've done the best of my life that I could do, and all my choices have brought me to this place of being love. But I live an ordinary life. I have 5 kids and a loving wife. I have friends. I work. I love the work that I do. I love participating in the community that I live in. But I'm not special. I'm not anything else but David.
there's a picture behind you. You know the golden right hand stands for truth, integrity, love. Pretty much. That's why you always see it behind me. It's the reason why it's behind you because you're that. And so I want you to take that.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you, Darius.